So who here remembers America's Most Wanted? Honestly, it's one of the shows that got me interested in true crime in the first place. Though I don't remember how old I was when I found out that John Walsh had a murdered son. To be honest, I had to have been a teenager because I remember something about VH1 doing a special on something and I can't remember anything other than that, and this is awkward, so transition. On July 27th, 1981, Adam Walsh went missing at a Sears parking lot. His mother, Reve, would never see her son again. He was 6, and his father made a vow to help find missing children and bring criminals to justice. John Walsh became one hell of a victims' rights advocate, helping launch many laws to protect children, and started not one, but 2 television shows designed to help law enforcement bring criminals to justice. Adam John Walsh was born on November 14, 1974 in Hollywood, Florida. According to John Walsh's book, Tears of Rage, From Grieving Father to Crusader for Justice, Adam was described by his father as an old soul. Because of John's lifestyle at the time, which I will get into, Adam was all for adventure. He never had a temper tantrum. In fact, once he learned to talk and grown into a young boy, Adam was very polite. He was also generous and giving. Adam also had a deep love for his grandfather, John Walsh Sr., who was nicknamed Adam, hence where Adam's name came from. He would strive to get his grandfather's attention as soon as he could stand, but unfortunately Adam's grandfather died a year after Adam was born. Adam also apparently could swim before he was even out of diapers. I was probably picking boogers when I was in diapers, but yeah. Adam loved baseball. It was when he wanted to play baseball that his parents changed their lives to accommodate him. Their lives were completely different before he was born, which leads me into his father. So, FYI, John Walsh is going to be the longest on this look at the family because he is well known. He has written books and has been on television, and his life is pretty well documented. I will try to summarize though. John Walsh Jr. was born December 26, 1945 in Auburn, New York, to John Walsh Sr., nicknamed Jack, or Adam, and also his mother, Jean Walsh. Even as a kid, he was a tough guy. He would fight with anyone over the littlest things. While his father, a World War II vet, hated fighting, he realized his son was a firebrand, and all he could do was teach him some valuable life lessons. John was taught by his father to respect and protect women. He even taught John to protect children and those in need. John Sr. would do this by inviting kids who had next to nothing over to the Walsh home and accommodated them accordingly. John would graduate high school and became a heavy equipment operator. At that same time, he was putting himself through community college at Auburn Community College in Auburn, New York. Soon he transferred to Buffalo State, first majoring in English, but changing it to history. It was during this time that he was almost drafted to go to Vietnam, but he failed because of a blown eardrum he picked up by sparring with one of his friends, who happened to be a Golden Gloves boxer. In 1967, he met a young woman named Reve Drew. She was 16 at the time. At this time, John was pretty much a hippie, so while they would date, they also would date other people. He also discovered around this time that he loved diving and got certified as a diver. He ended up moving to Florida where he could dive all year long. Reve would visit him from time to time. It was there he had a stroke of luck. While working at a resort, he found out about a child stuck in a drain pipe. So he rushed with his scuba gear and saved the boy's life. That boy happened to be the child of one of the executives. That executive would offer to take John under his wing and teach him about the hotel business, which John readily agreed to. But before he accepted fully, he rushed to Clarence, New York to ask Reve to marry him, which came as a shock since they weren't a couple and were friends at the time. It was so much of a shock he ended up having to wait on a porch for her because she happened to be on a date with another man. Whatever he said to her, it worked because they became engaged. On July 10th, 1971, they were married. So he was set up for life and he had a wife. He would adventure to the Caribbean, Bahamas, and everywhere he could with his wife. Soon though, they decided to have a child, and first try, they had Adam. Because of the nature of John's work, he wasn't home a lot, but Adam was surrounded by his mother, his godfather, and when he was home, John. While John ended up being paranoid about his son's safety after learning about an affair between Reve and Adam's godfather, he loved and cherished his child. Not much is known about Reve outside of John's memoirs and interviews she has done. Not even her date of birth. But if we go by her age in 1967, she was born roughly around 1951. She seems to be a more private person than her husband, so I have to respect her for that. She is described as self-assured and serene. She did live the same adventurous lifestyle that John's life could afford, but she did have an affair with Adam's godfather, feeling lonely, having a child to look after, and John seemingly emotionally distant with her were the causes for this affair. Adam's godfather, after all, would step in and help with Adam when needed. While this could have caused a rift between John and Reve, they worked it out. Both parents doted on Adam and loved him, feeling they were the luckiest parents in the world. It was on July 10th of 1981, Reve and John celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary. John had a new job. He'd be traveling less. They decided to try to have another child. This is when Reve broke it off with Adam's godfather. John was around more, and the thought of committing adultery while pregnant with John's second child bothered her. With the family not divided anymore, and all seemed patched up, they looked towards the future. John wanted some lamps he saw at Sears, so he asked Reve to pick them up. On July 27, 1981, after stopping at Adam's school to pay his tuition, they headed to the Hollywood Mall in Hollywood, Florida. Adam became interested in an Atari kiosk that was on display there. At the kiosk, there were several kids and teens playing games, so thinking nothing of it, Reve told Adam to wait there, play some games, and she would be back. Now, newer parents would scream that she was a horrible parent. Well, to that I say, you're looking at this from the view of the present. Back then, it wasn't thought about that some random stranger would come and abduct children. Ask anyone who grew up in the 70s and 80s. It was a different mentality than it is today. Back then, if the street lights came on, meant go home. Reve was only gone for 5 minutes. When she returned, he was gone. Now, with what had happened, there are two statements. The first is the accepted one, and the second came much later. The first is that a scuffle broke out with the boys. Security ended up having to kick them out. Adam could have possibly been kicked out with those boys. The boys were escorted to an exit that Adam wasn't even aware of, so he could have gotten lost trying to get back in the store. The other comes from a man who was 9 years old at the time, where he stated he was playing games with Adam when a man beckoned for Adam to go with him. Whichever story you believe, either way he was gone. Reve searched the store, talking to those who worked there and trying to find him. Adam's grandmother, John Walsh, also ended up at the store, but she had no idea of what happened. She had gone there for shopping. She didn't even know her grandson was missing until Reve told her. Jean and Reve would search the store, but there were no security cameras, and all the employees could do was go over the loudspeaker to tell Adam his mother was waiting by the front doors in hopes that he was still in the store. Reve and Jean would search, but he was gone. Then they went to the police, and the police at first were very little help. They didn't even treat it like it was an abduction or a missing persons case. Instead, they viewed it as a kid had wandered away. They didn't even put out a bolo for him, but they also thought he would end up back at home. As the day ended, even the cops began to take it seriously. The search was on. Helicopters, flyers, news reports, boats searched the canals, anything to find this missing child. But nothing was found of him until August 10th, 1981. On August 11th, 1981, John and Reve Walsh went on television to announce they're offering $100,000 reward for their son's safe return. This isn't the first reward that they offered. Since the time he was missing, they had been offering rewards, but it kept going up and up and up. And the call centers only got dead end after dead end after dead end. But this time, even with the call centers being flooded with calls, it had been too late to find him. The day before, 130 miles away from Hollywood, Florida in Vero Beach, on August 10th, two fishermen discovered Adam's severed head. The head was in grotesque condition, barely recognizable. They had to do dental records to figure it out. But detectives did contact the Walshes about the discovery, even before they ID'd the body. They would have to wait for dental records. Thus, John and Reve went ahead with their television appearance, knowing that their child could have been dead, or it could have been another kid. But it wasn't long until after that police contacted them again. The head was Adam's. His body would never be recovered. Searches of the area where the head was found would come up with nothing. The police were not very good at this missing persons case. They dragged their heels on it for a day. But with a murder investigation, it just got worse. I'm just gonna skip over the in-between because nothing really of substance happened. But it wasn't until 1983 that something finally did happen. On October 21st, 1983, Otis Toole confessed to murdering Adam Walsh. So who's Otis Toole? Well, for one thing, I might call him Otis a couple of times because Otis, it's spelled the same way. I don't care. But to summarize, he was a serial killer. He normally worked with Henry Lee Lucas, whom he had a sexual relationship with. He also was a drifter. He claimed to have, along with Lucas, killed over 1,000 people, which, yeah, he is a notorious liar and bragger. It's sometimes hard to tell when he's being truthful or when he's lying. He has a habit of confessing to shit he had nothing to do with or might not have done. He also apparently has antisocial personality disorder. But back to the confession. Otis Toole claims that on the day that Adam disappeared, he was in the Sears parking lot. He was able to lure Adam to the car with promises of toys and candy. I'm going to save the gory details of what he said in his confession because they are not PG and not suitable for YouTube at all. Let's just say this was a little boy and no one deserves what happened to this little boy. Toole claims that he knocked him out and took a machete and cut off his head. Then he said he drove around with his head in the car for a while. I bring this up for only 3 reasons. First reason, the coroner report states that the cause of death is asphyxiation, not decapitation. Second reason, the police lost his car and machete, so they had no way of investigating this. And 3, Otis Toole later stated he made up the whole thing and had nothing to do with it. But Police Chief Chadwick Wagner had stated that he was the prime suspect all along. For one, Otis Toole was in the area when Adam disappeared, but he was never charged. But he was already serving 2 life sentences when he confessed to the murder of Adam Walsh, so it wasn't like he was out there after he confessed. His confessions have, though, been proven to be unreliable. He would die in 1996, but in 1997, Police Chief Rick Stone would state while reviewing evidence that Otis Toole killed Adam Walsh, and the evidence he found was beyond a reasonable doubt. And I have not seen this evidence, and I don't know where you would go to find this evidence if it's ever been released. On December 16, 2008, with the Walshes in attendance, the chief of police at the time closed the case, stating Otis Toole was the murderer of Adam Walsh. If Otis Toole did do it, then justice was ultimately served, and the family could go on with their lives. But it bears repeating that Otis Toole was a notorious braggart and liar whose confessions were more about his own ego than feeling guilty about his own crimes. If he didn't do it, then there's a chance that Adam's killer is still out there. On a side note though, he wasn't the only serial killer thought to have done it. Jeffrey Dahmer's name has been thrown about a lot. He lived in Miami Beach at the time. 2 eyewitnesses supposedly placed him in Sears that day. One claims to have seen a strange man walking into the toy department. The other claims that he saw Dahmer forcing a child into a van. He was questioned about it in 1992, which he denied having any involvement with it. Dahmer is quoted as saying, "I've told you everything. How I've killed them, how I cooked them, who I ate. Why wouldn't I tell you if I did it to somebody else?" Which he did, by the way. He confessed to all his murders and how he did everything. Dahmer was also different than Otis Toole. Otis Toole was an habitual liar. Jeffrey Dahmer had a habit of telling the truth too much. John Walsh has never bought into the whole entire Dahmer killed his son thing. There are other reasons for it, mostly because Dahmer's youngest victim was 14, and it was his only victim that was underage. Dahmer wasn't into kids. Also, he never abducted his victims. Every one of Dahmer's victims went to his home willingly. It didn't fit Dahmer's MO, considering the majority of his crimes happened after 1981, with one before, and that one was Stephen Mark Hicks, who was 18 at the time. So odds are it wasn't Dahmer. John Walsh, though, would grieve for his son. He would have 3 more children, Megan, born in 1982, Callahan in 1985, and his youngest Hayden, born in 1994. But the stain of the death of his son would drive him. He wouldn't sit back and just resume his job. No, it was never his style. John Walsh would fight back. John Walsh became an advocate for victims' rights. Through legislature and pushing Congress, he would help get laws passed. He had a big hand in launching the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The missing persons posters that you see at Walmart, the missing persons that were on milk cartons, all because he helped push for it. He lobbied for the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act, which was signed into law in 2006. This bill created the National Sex Offender Registry. In stores now, Code Adam is used to alert people that a child is missing in the store. While he didn't create the idea of it, he did support Amber Alert. But John Walsh is known for something other than laws and pushing government to make the country safer for children. That is the show America's Most Wanted. Starting on February 7th, 1988, America's Most Wanted was an hour-long show that profiles criminals that were at large. It featured reenactments of crimes, interviews, and a hotline you could call if you had any information about the whereabouts of a fugitive. Pretty much like old Unsolved Mysteries, but with only crime. John Walsh ran this until 2012. It was mostly on Fox, but in the last year of its life, with John Walsh at the helm, it was on the Lifetime Network. He is now on Investigation Discovery with a show called In Pursuit with John Walsh. I don't know the exact number, but John Walsh himself stated that he helped put away over 1,400 criminals, which I'm not going to dispute that. There was a made-for-television movie made about this case that a lot of people saw. It was one of those cases that did change the way we look at the safety of our children, and was one of the factors for the many PSAs that have been made warning kids to not talk to strangers. The public became very much aware of the dangers out there and the many kids going missing each year. Parents are now rightfully paranoid about letting their children out of their sight. I say rightly because there is a real fear, but at the same time, some parents can be way too overprotective. I do hope that this case is closed though. The police's official stance is that Otis Toole was responsible for the death of Adam Walsh. There are some that dispute that, but the case is officially closed. John and Reve Walsh's lives were turned upside down on July 27, 1981. No one would have thought differently about them if they chose to remain private, grieve the loss of their son, and try to move on with their lives. But both rose above their grief to do some real good in the world, all in the spirit of their beloved son.